We're incredibly grateful for your support. Before we begin today's tale, tell us, which city or country are you joining us from? We love connecting with our global audience. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. Paradise Lost. Brock Calloway stood at the edge of the construction site, surveying what would soon become the crown jewel of his architectural career. The San Francisco skyline glittered behind him as the autumn sun began its descent. At 42, Brock had built Calloway Designs into one of the most sought-after architectural firms on the West Coast, known for blending innovative sustainability with breathtaking aesthetics. Mr. Calloway, the investors are waiting in the trailer, his project manager called out. Brock checked his watch, custom-made, a gift from his wife Audrina for their 10th anniversary 3 years ago. He smiled, thinking of her. They'd met in his struggling days, when he was working 80-hour weeks to establish his name. Audrina Frost had been the gallery curator who'd helped display his architectural models in an exhibition. Smart, beautiful, with a keen eye for art and an infectious laugh that still made his heart skip a beat. "Tell them I'll be right there," Brock replied, snapping a few photos of the site with his phone to show Audrina later. He composed a quick text. "Almost done here. Dinner tonight at Oriole to celebrate?" He added a heart emoji, something he'd never have done before meeting her. No response came immediately, but that wasn't unusual. Audrina was likely busy at the gallery she now owned, Frost Perspectives, which had become one of the most exclusive contemporary art spaces in the city. The investment meeting ran long, with Brock expertly fielding questions about the eco-friendly materials that had driven up costs but would save millions in energy over decades. By the time he left, the sun had fully set and still no response from Audrina. He tried calling while driving home in his Tesla. Straight to voicemail. A flicker of concern, quickly dismissed. They'd both learned to respect each other's busy schedules. Their home, a renovated Victorian in Pacific Heights that Brock had personally redesigned, was dark when he arrived. No sign of Audrina's sleek Jaguar in the garage. Inside, Brock kicked off his shoes and called out, "Rena? You home?" Silence greeted him. He poured himself a whiskey and wandered through their immaculate home. In the kitchen, he noticed a business card on the counter that hadn't been there that morning. Tate Montgomery, attorney at law. Tate had been handling their estate planning for years, a charismatic lawyer who'd become something of a friend, often joining them for dinner parties. Brock's phone buzzed with a text from Audrina, working late at the gallery. "New installation. Don't wait up. Love you." He replied, "Want me to bring you dinner? Already ordered in. Get some sleep. Big day tomorrow with the Milan clients." Brock smiled, appreciating her remembering his schedule. That was Audrina, thoughtful even when busy. He wandered into his home office, intending to review sketches for a new project. A notification from their joint account app caught his attention. A transfer of $25,000 to an account he didn't recognize. Strange. Audrina usually discussed large transfers with him first. He called her again. Voicemail. A web search for the account number revealed nothing. Probably just gallery expenses, but the amount seemed high. He made a mental note to ask her about it tomorrow. As he worked through the evening, Brock received a call from his best friend and business partner, Weston Reed. "Brock, you're still awake? Thought you'd be celebrating the Hanson deal," Weston said. "Audrina's working late." "What's up?" "Just checking on the Milan presentation. Also, wanted to ask if you spoke with Tate recently." "No, what?" A pause. "Nothing urgent. Saw him having lunch with Audrina yesterday. Thought maybe they were discussing something about your trusts." Brock's brow furrowed. "She didn't mention it." "Probably nothing," Weston said quickly. "How's the Kensington Heights project coming along?" They discussed work for another 15 minutes before hanging up. Brock stared at his phone, contemplating calling Audrina again, but decided against it. Trust had always been their foundation. Later that night, as he drifted off to sleep in their empty king-sized bed, Brock's phone chimed with another bank notification. A second transfer, this time for $50,000. To the same unknown account. Sleep eluded him after that. Chapter 2. The Descent. Morning came with Audrina's side of the bed still empty. Unusual, but not unprecedented when she had major installations. Brock showered and dressed, determined to stop by the gallery before his first meeting. His phone rang as he was leaving. Audrina. "Morning, stranger," he said, trying to keep his tone light. Brock, I'm so sorry. Her voice sounded strained. I fell asleep at the gallery. We're installing the Nakamura sculptures, and the timing is impossible. I was worried. Are you okay? There were some large transfers from our account last night. A brief pause. Oh, that. It's for the insurance on the Nakamura pieces. They're valued at over $8 million. I should have mentioned it, but things have been so hectic. That's a lot for insurance, Brock said carefully. International artist, last-minute installation. Premium rates, she explained. I'll show you all the paperwork tonight, promise. How about dinner at home? I'll cook. His unease faded somewhat. Sounds perfect. Love you. Love you too. Brock arrived at his office to find Weston waiting with fresh coffee and concern etched on his face. You look like hell, Weston observed. Rough night. Listen, has Audrina mentioned anything about a major installation? Japanese sculptor named Nakamura. Weston frowned. Nakamura? He canceled his North American tour last month. Health issues. Brock's stomach tightened. You're sure? Positive. Penny wanted to see his work, so I looked into getting tickets. Weston studied his friend's face. Brock, what's going on? Before he could answer, his assistant interrupted. Mr. Calloway, the contractor from Kensington Heights, needs you on site immediately. Something about the foundation. Distracted by work emergencies, Brock pushed his personal concerns aside. The foundation issue required his full attention. A potential structural problem that could compromise the entire project. Hours later, covered in dust and mentally exhausted, Brock received a text from an unknown number. You should know the truth about your wife. Storage Unit 342 at Bayside Security Storage. Code 5392. He stared at the message, heart pounding. Unknown numbers usually meant potential clients. This was different. After finishing at the site, Brock drove to Bayside Security Storage instead of heading back to the office. Every rational part of him said to ignore the message, to trust his wife of 13 years. But the unexplained transfers, the lie about Nakamura. Unit 342 was in the climate control section. The keypad accepted the code, and the door slid open to reveal a meticulously organized space. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A desk with a computer stood in the center. The opposite wall held framed photos of Audrina and Tate Montgomery. Not friendly photos, intimate ones. Brock's legs nearly gave out. He steadied himself against the desk, accidentally waking the computer. The screen showed an email account he didn't recognize, but with Audrina's name. The most recent message from Tate, everything in place. After tomorrow, we're clear. A folder on the desktop labeled New Life contained documents, property records for a villa in Monaco, offshore account details showing millions, and most disturbingly, multiple identity packages with Audrina and Tate's photos, but different names. Brock's phone rang. Weston again. Not a good time. Brock answered, his voice hollow. Where are you? Tate Montgomery just came by looking for you. Seemed nervous. I'm at Bayside Storage. Brock struggled to keep his voice steady. Wesley, I think Audrina and Tate are. A noise behind him. Brock turned to see a man he didn't recognize blocking the doorway. Mr. Calloway, you weren't supposed to be here. Who are you? The man stepped forward. Just someone doing a job. Nothing personal. Brock caught a glimpse of metal. Wait. Pain exploded in his skull, and darkness followed. Chapter 3, Awakening. The rhythmic beeping penetrated the darkness first. Then came the antiseptic smell, the scratchy sheets, the distant murmur of voices. Brock fought to open his eyes, each lid weighing 1,000 pounds. A blurry figure in white hovered nearby. Mr. Calloway? Can you hear me? Brock tried to speak, but his throat felt like sandpaper. A straw touched his lips, and he sipped cool water gratefully. You're at Mercy General Hospital, the nurse continued, adjusting something on his fore. I'm Delia Hammond, your primary nurse. You've been in a coma for nearly 7 months. 7 months. The words barely registered. Wife, he managed to croak. Nurse Hammond's expression softened with pity. I'll contact your emergency contact. Just rest now. Over the next few days, strength gradually returned to Brock's body as the fog in his mind began to clear. The neurologist, Dr. Abel Woodruff, explained his condition with clinical precision. Traumatic brain injury. You were found in a storage unit with severe head trauma. The first few months were touch and go. My wife. Brock asked again, stronger now. Dr. Woodruff hesitated. Perhaps we should wait until you're stronger. Tell me. The doctor sighed. According to our records, your wife visited regularly for the first month, then less frequently. Her last visit was about 5 months ago. Has anyone else visited? A Mr. Reed comes by weekly. He's been notified of your improvement. When Weston finally appeared, the shock on his face was genuine. Jesus Christ, Brock, you're really awake. His eyes were bloodshot, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. Once the medical staff left them alone, Weston collapsed into the visitor's chair. They said you might never wake up. The brain damage was, they weren't optimistic. Audrina. Weston's face hardened. That's complicated. Tell me everything. After you were found, she was devastated, or seemed to be. Perfect grieving wife for the cameras. Then about 2 months in, when the doctors started using words like persistent vegetative state, things changed. Weston pulled out his tablet and navigated to a news article. The headline made Brock's blood run cold. Prominent architect's wife fights to honor his wishes. The article detailed how Audrina Calloway had petitioned the court to become Brock's medical proxy, claiming he wouldn't want to live attached to machines. It mentioned the tragic accident that left him comatose after falling downstairs at a construction site. She tried to have my life support terminated? Brock whispered. I fought it, Weston said grimly. Hired the best medical rights attorney in the state. Brought in our college friends to testify about your resilience, your statements over the years about fighting to live. The judge sided with me, barely. Brock closed his eyes, the betrayal washing over him in waves. There's more, Weston continued reluctantly. About 4 months ago, she had you declared legally dead. What? How? She convinced the court you were brain dead. Paid off a specialist to testify. I couldn't fight her on the medical facts. I'm not a doctor. By then, they'd moved you to a long-term care facility, and she controlled who could visit. My attorney found a loophole that let me check on you, but I couldn't get independent medical opinions. Brock's mind raced. If I'm legally dead, she collected your $5 million life insurance policy, sold your shares in Calloway Designs to an overseas investor, liquidated most of your assets. And Tate Montgomery? Weston's expression darkened further. He handled all the legal work. Very efficient. Nurse Hammond entered with medication, interrupting their conversation. After she left, Weston leaned closer. There's something else you should know. Audrina and Tate are getting married next month. Big society wedding at the Cliffside Resort. The words hit Brock like physical blows. His wife and his lawyer, planning to kill him, then stealing his life when they failed. Does she know I'm awake? No, Weston said firmly. I convinced the hospital to keep it confidential. Said it was for your protection, which isn't a lie. Good. Brock's voice had changed, hardened. Keep it that way. What are you thinking? Brock stared at the ceiling, his architect's mind already constructing a new design, one built for retribution. I'm legally dead, right? Yes. Then it's time they dealt with a ghost. Chapter 4. Phantom Investigations. 3 weeks later, in a modest safe house owned by Weston's family in Sausalito, Brock stood before a mirror, barely recognizing himself. His once robust frame had thinned considerably, cheekbones now sharp beneath his skin. His formerly dark brown hair had been dyed sandy blonde and cut short. A beard, something he'd never worn before, covered the lower half of his face. Physical therapy had been brutal but effective. Dr. Woodruff, sworn to secrecy and handsomely compensated, had arranged for intensive rehabilitation. Brock still walked with a slight limp and tired easily, but determination drove him beyond physical limitations. You sure about this? Weston asked, entering the room with coffee. Would you let it go? If it were Penny? Brock countered, referring to Weston's wife of 20 years. Weston shook his head. Probably not, but I might consider the legal route. They already manipulated the legal system once. Declare me dead while I was still breathing. Brock took the coffee. Besides, I need to know everything before I make my move. The doorbell rang. and Weston went to answer it. He returned with Mira Delgado, a former FBI forensic accountant turned private investigator. Her reputation for discretion was legendary among San Francisco's elite. "Mr. Calloway," she said, shaking his hand firmly. "I was told you were dead." "That's the general understanding," Brock replied. "I like to keep it that way for now." They settled in the living room, and Mira opened her laptop. "Based on the information Mr. Reed provided, I've already begun preliminary investigation." "Your wife." "Ex-wife," Brock corrected. "Legally, she's still your wife. Your death didn't automatically dissolve the marriage. But that's a technicality for later," Mira said matter-of-factly. "Mrs. Calloway began shifting assets approximately 10 months ago, 3 months before your accident." Brock's jaw tightened. The timeline confirmed his suspicions. The planning had begun long before he'd found that storage unit. "Smart transfers," Mira continued. "Nothing large enough to trigger automatic fraud alerts. Total of approximately $3.2 million moved to various offshore accounts before your incident. After your death, another $12 million, including your life insurance and property sales." "And Tate Montgomery?" Myra's expression darkened. "Mr. Montgomery has a pattern. He's specialized in estate planning for wealthy clients for 15 years. During that time, 3 of his married clients died unexpectedly. In each case, he ended up romantically involved with a widow within months." "And no one noticed this pattern?" Weston asked incredulously. "Different social circles spread over years. He's careful." Mira pulled up photographs on her laptop. "However, I found something interesting about one case from 6 years ago. Montgomery represented Gregory Phillips, tech entrepreneur. Phillips died mountain climbing. Accident, officially. Montgomery began dating the widow, Alexandria Phillips, shortly after. Brock studied the photo of an attractive redhead. What happened? They were engaged within 6 months. 2 weeks before the wedding, Alexandria died in a boating accident. Montgomery inherited her estate as her fiancé. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "You think he killed her?" Brock finally asked. "I think it's convenient," Mira replied carefully. Alexandria had expressed concerns to friends about financial discrepancies shortly before her death. Brock stood, pacing despite his lingering weakness. "So his pattern is to find wealthy targets through his legal practice, either kill them or work with their spouses to eliminate them, then take control of the assets. And when the spouse becomes a liability." "That would be my assessment," Mira agreed. "Though proving it is another matter. He's never been formally investigated. Audrina might not realize she's expendable," Weston said quietly. "She made her choice," Brock replied coldly. "What about their wedding plans?" Mira pulled up a digital invitation. 3 weeks from now, Cliffside Resort. Evening ceremony overlooking the Pacific, followed by reception for 200 guests. "Expensive taste," Brock muttered. "They're using your money," Weston reminded him. Brock turned to Mira. "I need everything. Their daily routines, the wedding details, security arrangements. And I want to know where my money went. Already working on it. I've also been building a profile on the groomsmen and bridesmaids. Potential allies or vulnerabilities. One more thing," Brock said. "My death certificate. Who signed it?" "Dr. Philip Winters. Neurologist brought in by Montgomery. No prior connection to your case." Myra's eyes narrowed. "He's attending the wedding. Close friend of Montgomery's, apparently." "Interesting." Brock's expression hardened. "Weston, we need another meeting. Someone with technical skills." "I know just the person," Weston replied, already reaching for his phone. Later that evening, Brock stood on the balcony overlooking the bay, memories flooding back. His last conscious moments in that storage unit. The betrayal that had been months in the making. Weston joined him, offering a whiskey. "Flynn will be here tomorrow. Best security specialist I know. Completely off the books." "Good." Brock took the glass, staring at the distant lights of San Francisco. "I need to see her, Wes. Need to see them together." "That's risky. I'll be careful, but I need to see it with my own eyes." The following day, disguised with glasses, hat, and his new beard, Brock sat in a rented car across from Frost Perspectives Gallery. At precisely 6:30 p.m., Audrina emerged, still beautiful, her dark hair swept up elegantly, designer coat fluttering in the breeze. A black Porsche pulled up, and Tate Montgomery stepped out, kissing Audrina with comfortable familiarity. They looked happy, in love. Something cold and hard crystallized in Brock's chest as he watched them drive away together. In that moment, he knew he could go through with his plan, whatever it took. Chapter 5. Gathering Storms. Flynn Russo arrived as promised the next morning, a compact woman with short silver hair and calculating eyes that missed nothing. Her background in military intelligence, followed by private security consultation, made her perfect for what Brock needed. Impressive setup, she commented, examining the evidence wall they'd created in the safe house's dining room. Photos, timelines, financial records, all connected with colored string. Can you do it? Brock asked directly. Flynn studied the Cliffside Resort's security schematic that Mira had somehow acquired. Getting you in is possible. Their security is focused on keeping paparazzi and wedding crashers out, not ghosts. She turned to face him. The real question is what happens once you're inside. What exactly is your plan, Mr. Calloway? Justice, Brock replied. Flynn raised an eyebrow. That's a goal, not a plan. Over the next hours, they outlined a strategy. Flynn would handle security bypass and communications. Mira continued tracing financial records and building profiles on key wedding participants. Weston would manage legal contingencies. We need more, Brock said finally. Something definitive linking them to the attempt on my life. The man who attacked you, Weston suggested. If we could find him. Mira looked up from her laptop. I might have something. Large cash withdrawal from one of Audrina's hidden accounts, day before your attack. $50,000. Hit money, Flynn said grimly. Can you trace it? Mira shook her head. Cash disappears. But I have a contact in SFPD. Could check if anyone matching our description was arrested for other crimes around that time. Do it, Brock authorized. As days passed, their operation grew more refined. Flynn installed surveillance on Audrina and Tate's new penthouse, purchased with Brock's money. Cameras, microphones, access to their digital communications. Legally questionable, Weston had warned. I'm dead, remember? Brock replied. Dead men can't break laws. A week into their surveillance, they captured their first significant conversation between the conspirators. Everything's on schedule, Tate was saying, pouring wine in their luxurious living room. Final fitting tomorrow. Then we're clear until the rehearsal dinner. Audrina seemed distracted. Did you handle that issue with the accounts? Already done. After we're married, we'll move the remaining funds offshore, then route everything through the shell companies. Clean and untraceable. And Dr. Winters? Tate smiled. Attending as promised. Expensive friend to have, but worth every penny. Stop looking so pleased with yourself, Audrina said, but with affection in her voice. We're not clear yet. That detective friend of Weston's was asking questions again last week. Mira Delgado, Tate said dismissively. Former Fed with an overactive imagination. She's got nothing. And after the wedding, we'll be in Monaco for months. By the time we return, no one will care anymore. Brock rewatched the recording several times, studying Audrina's expressions, her mannerisms. Searching for any sign of the woman he thought he'd known. She's good, Flynn commented, watching him. Natural liar. Yes, Brock agreed quietly. She always was. The next breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Myra's police contact reported that a man named Vincent Sawyer had been arrested for armed robbery 2 months after Brock's attack. The physical description matched, and more importantly, he'd been found with $32,000 in cash he couldn't explain. He took a plea deal, Mira reported. Currently at Highland State Correctional. I need to talk to him, Brock decided. Prison visits are recorded, Weston cautioned. Your face would be on camera. Not if I go as his attorney, Flynn suggested. I have credentials that would pass inspection. What would make him talk? Weston asked. Brock considered. Money, fear, or both. 2 days later, Flynn returned from Highland State with a recorded conversation and a grim expression. He confirmed it, she said, connecting her device to the speakers. Listen. Vincent Sawyer's voice filled the room, nervous but eager. Yeah, I remember Calloway. Nothing personal, just a job. The lawyer set it up. Montgomery said it needed to look like an accident or robbery gone wrong. Paid half up front, half after. And the woman? Flynn's voice asked. Never met her. Montgomery handled everything. Said his client wanted her husband taken care of permanently. I was supposed to make it clean, one hit, then stage it. But Calloway turned at the last second. Messed up my swing. Had to hit him again. Why are you telling me this now? Statute of limitations don't matter if he's dead, right? Besides, Montgomery stiffed me on the second payment. Said I botched the job since Calloway lived. Not my fault he was built tough. The recording ended, leaving heavy silence in its wake. We have them, Weston said finally. Not yet, Brock countered. It's his word against theirs. Montgomery would claim Sawyer is lying for a reduced sentence. We need more. The wedding is in 11 days, Mira reminded them. Brock stared at the surveillance photos of Audrina and Tate, his expression hardening. Then we accelerate our plans. Throughout the next week, they worked relentlessly. Flynn prepared their technical infiltration of the Cliffside Resort. Mira continued building their evidence file. Wesson arranged for a court reporter to be on standby, along with a judge who owed him a favor. 5 days before the wedding, they received an unexpected visit. A sleek black car pulled up to the safe house, and a man in an expensive suit emerged. Brock recognized him immediately from Myra's files. Detective Solomon Drake, retired homicide investigator, now working private security for wealthy clients. Weston intercepted him at the door while Brock watched from the shadows of the adjoining room. Mr. Reed, Drake said coolly. Interesting location for a vacation home. What can I do for you, Detective Drake? Drake smiled thinly. I'm not a detective anymore. Just curious why you and Ms. Delgado are so interested in Tate Montgomery and his fiancée. My client finds it concerning. Your client. I occasionally provide security consultation for Mr. Montgomery. Professional courtesy, letting you know your surveillance has been noticed. Brock stepped into the doorway. Decision made in an instant. Hello, Detective Drake. Drake's normally impassive face showed genuine shock. Calloway, you're supposed to be dead. Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated, Brock replied, and arranged by your client. Explain, Drake demanded, hand instinctively moving toward where his service weapon would once have been. I think you better come inside, Weston said. Chapter 6, Allies and Architects. Detective Drake sat silently as they presented their evidence. Financial records, surveillance footage, Sawyer's confession, medical reports contradicting the death certificate. So Montgomery and your wife tried to have you killed, Drake summarized. When that failed, they had you declared brain dead, then legally dead, to steal your fortune. And now they're getting married with my money, Brock confirmed, while planning to disappear to Monaco after the honeymoon. Drake leaned back, face unreadable. Why show me this? Because you're an honest man, Mira said. I check your record. 22 years homicide, impeccable reputation. You took the security job with Montgomery because your pension wasn't enough for your daughter's medical bills. You've been busy, Drake commented. The question, Brock interjected, is what you'll do with this information. Drake studied him. If even half of this is true, they belong in prison. But evidence obtained illegally won't hold up in court. We're not going to court. Not yet. Brock outlined his plan. When he finished, Drake was silent for a long moment. You realize this borders on vigilantism? I prefer justice, Brock replied. They left me for dead. Stole my life. And if we're right about Montgomery's pattern, Audrina will suffer a convenient accident once he's secured my assets. You still care what happens to her? After everything. Brock's expression hardened. I want her to face consequences for her actions. Death would be too easy. Drake considered, then slowly nodded. I'll help on one condition. No one gets physically hurt. This stays within legal boundaries, however creatively interpreted. Agreed, Brock said immediately. Will Montgomery suspect you've switched sides? No. He thinks I'm investigating you out of self-interest. I'll report back that Reed and Delgado appear to be working an insurance fraud case unrelated to him. With Drake on board, their plans solidified. The detective provided invaluable inside information. The wedding security protocols, guest list verification processes, even the table arrangement for the reception. 3 days before the wedding, Flynn returned from another equipment run to find Brock alone in the safe house, studying old photos of him and Audrina. Wondering if it was all a lie, she asked, setting down her bags. Brock didn't look up. 13 years. We build a life. I keep searching my memories for warning signs I missed. People are complicated, Flynn said, sitting across from him. In my experience, few start out planning betrayal. It evolves. That doesn't make it better. No, she agreed. But understanding it might help you move forward afterward. Brock finally looked up. You think I should forgive her? Hell no, Flynn replied bluntly. I think you should get justice, then build a new life without letting bitterness consume you. There's a difference between justice and vengeance. A thin line, Brock muttered, but an important one. Flynn studied him. What happens after the wedding? Assuming everything goes as planned. The question caught him off guard. He'd been so focused on the confrontation that he'd given little thought to what came after. I don't know, he admitted. Reclaim my identity. Rebuild my company. Alone. Brock frowned. I'm not exactly in a place to trust anyone right now. Understandable, Flynn said, rising. But eventually, you'll need to decide what kind of man you want to be. The one before all this, or someone new. The next day, final preparations accelerated. Drake reported that Montgomery was becoming increasingly anxious as the wedding approached, checking security arrangements twice daily. He's paranoid, Drake told them. Keeps asking if I've noticed anything unusual around Audrina. Like he's expecting trouble. Does he suspect I'm alive? Brock asked. No, I think it's his pattern. Alexandria Phillips probably made him nervous too, before her accident. Mira arrived with additional financial evidence. Found the smoking gun. Montgomery has already set up a life insurance policy on Audrina. $5 million. He's the sole beneficiary. Just like with Alexandria, Weston noted grimly. Weddings in 2 days, Brock reminded them. Is everyone clear on their positions? They reviewed the plan one final time. Flynn would handle technical operations from a van near the resort. Mira would attend as a +1 to one of the financial industry guests, a former client who owed her a favor. Drake would be on official security duty. Weston would attend as an invited guest. Audrina had maintained the pretense that they were still on good terms despite his objections to her marrying so soon after Brock's death. And I'll be the surprise guest, Brock concluded. That evening, alone in his room, Brock opened a small safe containing items Weston had salvaged from his old life, his real passport, original wedding ring, and a small photo album. He flipped through images of happier times, wondering if Audrina had been calculating even then, or if something had changed. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. Weston entered with 2 glasses of whiskey. Last chance to reconsider, his friend said, handing him a drink. Having second thoughts? Just making sure you don't. Weston sat beside him. This won't be easy to come back from. Once you walk into that wedding, everything changes. Brock nodded. I died in that storage unit, Wes. The man I was, trusting, naive, he's gone. I just want the world to catch up to that reality. They clinked glasses silently, both aware of the irrevocable step they were about to take. The next morning, Flynn announced their final breakthrough, access to the resort's security camera system. We'll have eyes everywhere, she explained, showing the feeds on her laptop. Main entrance, ballroom, even the bridal suite. And our exit strategy is in place. Brock confirmed. Drake nodded. Coast Guard has been briefed about a training exercise near the cliffs that evening. They'll respond to our signal if needed. As the day of reckoning approached, a strange calm settled over Brock. The plan was solid. The evidence overwhelming. Justice was within reach. One last thing, he told the team as they concluded their final briefing. Whatever happens tomorrow, I want to thank you all. You believed in me when the world thought I was gone. Save the speeches for after we win, Flynn said with a rare smile. Brock nodded, his resolve hardening like concrete. Tomorrow, the dead would rise, and 2 lives built on betrayal would crumble to dust. Chapter 7. The Infiltration. The cliffside resort gleamed like a jewel against the setting sun, its modern glass and stone structure perched dramatically on the rocky California coastline. Luxury vehicles lined the winding driveway, disgorging impeccably dressed guests for what society columns had dubbed the wedding of the season. 3 miles away, parked in a nondescript van with tinted windows, Flynn Russo monitored a wall of screens showing security camera feeds from the resort. Beside her sat Brock, nearly unrecognizable in his formal attire, blonde hair slicked back, trimmed beard professionally groomed. "Comms check," Flynn said, adjusting her headset. "Read in position," came Weston's voice. "Entering main ballroom now." "Delgado on site," Mira reported. "Eastern terrace with clear view of the altar." Drake confirming security positions as discussed, the detective added. "Ceremony starts in 40 minutes. Brock studied the screens, catching glimpses of familiar faces, business associates, friends, art world luminaries. People who had attended his funeral, now celebrating his wife's remarriage not even a year later. "Cold feet?" Flynn asked, noting his expression. "No," Brock replied, "just realizing how easily people move on." "Focus on the mission," she reminded him. "Tate Montgomery just arrived in the groom's suite. Your wife, Audrina, is still in the bridal suite with her party." Brock checked his watch. "Time to move." Flynn handed him a small earpiece. "Remember, you're Samuel Porter, IT specialist. Your credentials will scan properly if checked. We go as rehearsed. No improvisations." The service entrance of the Cliffside Resort was busy with staff preparing for the reception. Flynn had timed Brock's arrival precisely during a shift change, when unfamiliar faces would draw less scrutiny. Brock swiped the access card Flynn had programmed, and the service door unlocked with a soft click. Inside, he navigated the back corridors with confidence, following the memorized route to avoid security cameras not under Flynn's control. "First checkpoint," Flynn murmured in his ear. 3 staff members approaching from the north corridor. "Duck into the linen closet on your right." Brock complied, pressing himself against shelves of pristine white towels as footsteps passed by. Once clear, he continued toward the administrative level, where Flynn had identified a blind spot in the security coverage, a small server room adjacent to the resort's main office. "You're clear to the server room," she confirmed. "Once inside, you'll have 20 minutes before the next security sweep." The server room was cool and dimly lit, humming with equipment. Brock settled into position, connecting the small device Flynn had provided to the resort's internal network. "Connection established," Flynn reported. "I now have access to all internal communications. The wedding planner just confirmed the ceremony will begin in exactly 32 minutes. Brock took a deep breath, centering himself. Everything had led to this moment. The months of physical rehabilitation, the painstaking investigation, the careful planning. "Mira has visual on Dr. Winters," Flynn continued. "He's seated in the 3rd row, looking nervous." "As he should be," Brock replied coldly. "Weston reports Montgomery is greeting guests personally, acting like the perfect host." Brock checked his watch again. "Status on the evidence package." "Drake confirmed delivery to Judge Harriman. She's reviewing it now and standing by for your signal." The plan's first phase was complete. Infiltration successful. Systems access established. Now came the waiting. "Movement in the bridal suite," Flynn reported suddenly. "Looks like they're finishing up. Audrina will be moving toward the ceremony site in approximately 5 minutes." Brock closed his eyes momentarily, steeling himself. "Show me." Flynn switched one of the monitors to the bridal suite feed. There stood Audrina, resplendent in a designer gown that must have cost a fortune, his fortune. Her dark hair was arranged in an elegant updo, diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. She looked radiant, happy. Something twisted in Brock's chest. Not love, not anymore, but a complex ache for what might have been. "Route to position B is clear," Flynn said, pulling him back to the present. "Move now if you want to intercept." Brock hesitated only a second. "No, we stick to the plan. Maximum impact." He exited the server room cautiously, moving toward his next position. The corridors had become busier as the ceremony approached, but his disguise and confident demeanor prevented anyone from questioning his presence. "Audrina is leaving the suite now," Flynn updated. wedding planner and bridesmaids in tow. Brock quickened his pace, reaching a service elevator that would take him to his staging area near the ceremony space. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of familiar red hair, Valerie Harmon, Audrina's younger sister and maid of honor. For a moment, Brock feared recognition, but Valerie was focused on adjusting something on her dress, never looking up as she hurried past. The elevator descended to the lower level, where a corridor led directly beneath the clifftop ceremony area. According to the blueprints Flynn had acquired, a service stairway would bring him up exactly behind the floral arrangement at the back of the seating area. All guests seated, Flynn reported. Montgomery is at the altar. Processional music starting. Brock positioned himself at the bottom of the service stairs, listening to the muffled orchestral music above. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. Bridesmaids are proceeding. Flynn continued her narration. Audrina preparing to walk down the aisle. Timing looks perfect. Brock began ascending the stairs slowly, counting his steps. Judge Harriman confirms she's ready for your evidence, Flynn added. Drake has 3 officers standing by in unmarked vehicles. At the top of the stairs, Brock paused behind the door that would lead him to the ceremony. Through a small window, he could see the back of the audience, all facing toward the ocean view where Montgomery stood beside the officiant. The wedding march began to play. Audrina is walking down the aisle, Flynn reported unnecessarily. 30 seconds to your cue. Brock adjusted his tie one last time, removed his fake glasses, and touched the small microphone concealed in his lapel. Broadcasting capabilities confirmed, Flynn said. Resort speakers are now under our control. Through the window, Brock watched as Audrina reached the altar, taking Montgomery's outstretched hands. The officiant began speaking, his words carrying clearly in the evening air. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to celebrate the union of Audrina and Tate in matrimony. Brock's hand found the door handle. Now, Flynn said simply. The door opened silently, and Brock Calloway stepped into the light of his own resurrection. Chapter 8. Till Death Do U.S. Part. The ceremony continued, oblivious to Brock's presence at the back of the seating area. The officiant's voice carried over the gentle crash of waves below the cliff. Marriage is a sacred bond, entered into with joy and solemnity. Brock began walking slowly down the outer aisle. A few guests glanced his way, then returned their attention to the ceremony. He was just another late arrival, nothing to disturb the perfect tableau at the altar. Speak now, or forever hold your peace. The traditional line created Brock's perfect opening. He stepped into the center aisle and spoke, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed gathering. I have something to say. Heads turned. Murmurs rippled through the audience. At the altar, the officiant looked confused, while Montgomery's head snapped up with irritation. Sir, if you could please take a seat, the officiant began. Brock continued walking forward, his eyes locked on Audrina, who had yet to turn around. I object to this marriage on the grounds that the bride is already married. He paused dramatically. To me, Audrina froze, then slowly turned, her expression transforming from annoyance to disbelief to horror in the space of seconds. Brock, she whispered, the name barely audible, but the microphones Flynn had placed captured it perfectly. The assembled guests erupted in confusion. Montgomery stepped protectively in front of Audrina, then faltered as recognition dawned. This is impossible, he said hoarsely. You're dead. Reports of my death, Brock replied, continuing his deliberate approach, were falsified. By you. Security personnel began moving toward Brock, but Drake intercepted them, flashing credentials. Stand down. Police matter. The whispering intensified as guests recognized the supposedly deceased architect. Cameras appeared in hands, capturing the unfolding drama despite the no photography rule. I don't know what kind of sick joke this is, Montgomery recovered quickly, addressing the confused guests. But this man is clearly an imposter. Brock Calloway died last year. We all mourned him. Did we? Brock asked, now standing just feet from the altar. Or did you and my wife celebrate? After arranging my accident, after having me declared brain dead against all medical evidence, after emptying my accounts and collecting my life insurance. Montgomery's face hardened. Security? Remove this man immediately. That won't be happening, came Drake's authoritative voice. He nodded to two plainclothes officers who had emerged from the crowd. Mr. Montgomery, step away from Ms. Harmon. Audrina had gone deathly pale, one hand clutching her bouquet so tightly that white roses began shedding petals to the ground. Brock, she finally managed, her voice trembling. You were in a coma. The doctors said there was no hope. Which doctors? Brock interrupted. Dr. Winters, perhaps? He turned to face the increasingly uncomfortable neurologist in the third row. The same Dr. Winters who falsified my death certificate without ever examining me, who's attended 3 other weddings where Montgomery married wealthy widows under suspicious circumstances. Winters half rose, then sank back as all eyes turned to him. This is outrageous, Montgomery blustered, though sweat had begun to bead on his forehead. You have no proof of these wild accusations. Actually, Mira Delgado stepped forward, tablet in hand. We have extensive proof. Financial records showing systematic theft of Mr. Calloway's assets. Medical records contradicting your claims about his condition. Testimony from Vincent Sawyer, the man you hired to stage Mr. Calloway's accident. Flynn's voice came through Brock's earpiece. Judge Harriman has issued the warrants based on our evidence. Green light for arrests. On cue, one of the plainclothes officers stepped forward. Tate Montgomery, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, fraud, and falsification of medical documents. The second officer approached Audrina. Audrina Calloway, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and theft. All pretense collapsed from Montgomery's face, replaced by cold calculation. He glanced toward the cliff edge mere yards away, clearly gauging his chances. Don't, Drake warned, reading his intention. Montgomery lunged suddenly, not toward the cliff, but toward Audrina, grabbing her arm roughly. Tell them it's a mistake. Tell them it was your idea. Security officers converged, but not before Audrina wrenched away, her expression thunderous. My idea? You approached me. You said no one would get hurt. Just move to a care facility while we accessed his accounts. The admission silenced the crowd. Photographers from Society pages captured every moment of the unraveling. You lying bitch, Montgomery hissed. You wanted him gone as much as I did. More. Just put him somewhere he'll never wake up, you said. I can't divorce him. I'll lose everything. Their mutual betrayal played out before horrified guests as officers separated and handcuffed them. Dr. Winters attempted to slip away in the chaos, but was intercepted by Drake personally. The conspiracy widens, Drake announced, loud enough for all to hear. Dr. Philip Winters, you're under arrest for falsification of medical documents and conspiracy to commit fraud. Brock watched impassively as his would-be murderers were led away. Audrina looked back once, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face. Brock, please. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I never wanted you hurt. He said nothing, his silence more damning than any accusation could be. As the police escorted the wedding party, turned criminal defendants away, stunned guests began to disperse. Some approached Brock tentatively, expressions oscillating between shock, sympathy, and the vulture-like interest of those witnessing a spectacular social downfall. Weston appeared at his side, a steadying presence. You okay? Brock exhaled slowly, the tension of months finally beginning to release. I will be. Flynn's voice came through the earpiece one last time. Mission accomplished. Meet at extraction point in 10 minutes. Judge Harriman wants to speak with you directly. As Brock turned to leave, Valerie Harmon blocked his path, her face tear-streaked but resolute. I didn't know, she said fiercely. I swear to God, Brock, I thought you were gone. We all did. He studied her, searching for deceit and finding only genuine distress. I believe you, Val. What happens now? Justice, he replied simply, continuing past her toward the exit where his team awaited. Behind him, the elaborate wedding decorations fluttered in the evening breeze. Roses and champagne and broken promises scattered across the clifftop, where two lives built on betrayal had crumbled to dust. Chapter 9. Phoenix Rising. 3 months after the wedding that never was, Brock Calloway stood in the courtroom as the judge delivered her verdict. The gallery was packed. Journalists, curious onlookers, and a few genuine supporters, including Weston, Mira, Flynn, and unexpectedly, Valerie Harmon. The court finds the defendants guilty on all counts, Judge Prescott announced, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed room. Sentencing will be scheduled for next month. Audrina and Montgomery sat at separate tables with their respective attorneys, no longer presenting a united front. Their partnership had dissolved into mutual recrimination within days of their arrest, each attempting to minimize their own culpability by implicating the other. As the court adjourned, Brock felt Weston's hand on his shoulder. "It's over, my friend." But was it? Legal victory aside, Brock still faced the monumental task of rebuilding his life. Legally resurrecting himself had proven almost as complicated as the crime that killed him. Insurance companies reluctantly returned his policy payouts, but fought vigorously against penalty fees. Reclaiming his identity had required endless paperwork and court appearances. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed him with questions. "Mr. Calloway, how does it feel to see justice served? Will you rebuild Calloway Designs? Do you have any comments about Audrina Calloway's testimony that she never intended for you to be harmed?" Brock paused at the last question. Throughout the trial, Audrina had maintained that she'd only wanted him warehoused in long-term care while they accessed his fortune, as if that somehow absolved her of responsibility. "No comment," he said finally, pushing through the crowd toward the waiting car. Later that evening, Brock hosted a small gathering at his new home, a modernist structure he'd designed himself, perched on a hillside with views of the bay, but far from his old neighborhood and its painful memories. "To justice," Flynn proposed, raising her glass. "And to new beginnings," Mira added. Brock nodded appreciatively, but remained quiet, his mind elsewhere. The victory felt hollow somehow, lacking the closure he'd anticipated. After the others departed, Weston lingered, nursing a final whiskey on the terrace. "Something's still bothering you," he observed. Brock sighed. "I got everything I wanted. Proof. Justice. Vindication. So why doesn't it feel finished?" "Because it's not about them anymore," Weston replied thoughtfully. "It's about you. Who you become after the fight ends." The words echoed Flynn's advice from months earlier. Before Brock could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I need to speak with you. It's important." "Valerie." Intrigued, Brock agreed to meet Valerie the following day at a quiet cafe in Sausalito, away from media attention. She arrived punctually, looking nothing like the glamorous maid of honor from the aborted wedding. Dressed in simple jeans and a sweater, her red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, she seemed years younger and infinitely more authentic. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as they settled at a corner table. "I wasn't sure you would." Curiosity won out, Brock admitted. "What's so important?" Valerie placed a thumb drive on the table between them. "After the arrests, I went through Audrina's things before the police seized everything. Found this in her personal laptop. I think you should see it." "What is it?" "Emails. Journal entries. Things she never intended anyone to see." Valerie met his gaze directly. "It doesn't excuse what she did. Nothing could. But it might help you understand." Brock stared at the small device, unsure whether he wanted the insight it offered. "Why are you giving me this?" "Because I've lost my sister to prison, and you lost the woman you thought you married. We're both grieving versions of Audrina that maybe never really existed." She pushed the drive closer to him. "Maybe understanding is the only closure either of us gets." That night, alone in his study, Brock finally inserted the drive into his laptop. The files were organized chronologically, beginning 3 years earlier, long before the conspiracy against him had formed. The earliest entries revealed a Audrina he barely recognized, increasingly resentful of living in his shadow, feeling like Brock Calloway's wife, rather than an independent person. Her success with the gallery had brought confidence, but also a growing sense that she deserved more. Then came entries about meeting Montgomery at a charity gala while Brock was traveling for work. Initial flirtation evolved into a deeper connection, with Montgomery carefully nurturing her dissatisfaction. Tate understands me in ways Brock never has, one entry read. He sees me, not just an extension of someone else's success. The manipulation was evident to Brock now. Montgomery systematically exploiting Audrina's insecurities while positioning himself as her champion. But the truly disturbing entries came later, as their affair deepened and plans formed. Tate says divorce would mean losing everything I've worked for. The prenup would leave me with almost nothing. It's not fair. I've contributed to building our life as much as Brock has. Then, Tate suggested an alternative today. It sounds terrible even writing it down, but what if Brock were simply incapacitated? Not harmed, just unable to manage his affairs? I'd be his caretaker on paper while actually living my life. The moral slide continued, rationalization by rationalization, until the final entries showed genuine shock when the accident had been more violent than planned. Her horror at Brock's condition. Her initial refusal of Montgomery's suggestion to terminate life support. But that horror had eventually given way to acceptance, then active participation in the fraud as weeks passed with no improvement in Brock's condition. The final entries showed growing concern about Montgomery's trustworthiness, but by then, she was too deeply implicated to back out. Brock closed the laptop, emotions churning. The woman he'd loved had betrayed him incrementally, step by small step, not in one dramatic decision. It didn't excuse her actions, but it painted a more complex picture than the cartoon villain he'd constructed in his mind. The next morning, he made an unexpected decision. Using his considerable influence, Brock arranged to visit Audrina at the detention center where she awaited sentencing. She entered the visitor's room slowly, prison garb replacing designer clothes, her face bare of makeup, dark circles beneath her eyes. She stopped short upon seeing him, clearly not expecting this particular visitor. "Brock," she said quietly, taking the seat across from him. "Why are you here?" "Closure," he replied simply. "For both of us. I don't deserve closure. This isn't about what you deserve. It's about what I need to move forward." She studied him, then nodded slowly. "What do you want to know? Was any of it real? Us?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. "Yes," she said finally. "Most of it was real. That's what makes this so horrible. I did love you, Brock, for many years, until Montgomery. It wasn't just about him." She met his gaze directly for the first time. "It was about me, who I became in your shadow. How easy it was to disappear as Brock Calloway's wife. So you decided to erase me instead. I never meant for you to be hurt physically. That wasn't the plan. But you were fine with me spending the rest of my life in a care facility while you spent my money." The anger he'd suppressed rose suddenly. "How is that any better?" Audrina flinched but didn't look away. "It's not. I became someone I never thought I could be, one small decision at a time. By the time I realized how far I'd gone, it seemed impossible to turn back." Silence fell between them, heavy with 13 years of shared history now irreparably tainted. "I read your journal," Brock said finally. Surprise flickered across her face. "Valerie." She thought it might help me understand. "Does Montgomery know what you wrote?" "No. He thinks I was as calculating as he was from the beginning." A bitter smile touched her lips. "Turns out I was just a Mark II in his longer game." Brock considered this. "The prosecutors believe he intended to eliminate you after securing my assets. Like Alexandria Phillips." Audrina paled slightly. "He always said that was a tragic accident. I'm sure he would have said the same about you." The full weight of her predicament seemed to settle on Audrina's shoulders. "I've lost everything. My freedom, my reputation, my sister's respect. Your life at least can be rebuilt. That's what I came to tell you," Brock said, rising. "I'm not going to let what you did define the rest of my life. I'm moving forward, without hatred, without the need for further retribution." "That sounds like forgiveness," she said cautiously. "It's not. I'll never forgive what you did." His voice remained steady. "But I won't let it poison my future either. That's the difference between us, Audrina. You let resentment transform you into someone unrecognizable. I refuse to do the same. As he turned to leave, she called after him. What will you do now? Brock paused at the door. Live. Create. Start over. Alone. He considered the question. For now, trust doesn't come easily anymore. For what it's worth, she said quietly, I am sorry, Brock. He nodded once, not turning back. Goodbye, Audrina. Outside, in the bright California sunshine, Brock felt lighter than he had in months. Not healed, not whole, but moving in that direction. His phone buzzed with messages from Weston about potential new projects, from Mira about recovered assets, from Flynn checking in. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn evening reminiscent of the day his old life had ended, Brock stood at the podium of a charity gala for traumatic brain injury research. The ballroom was filled with supporters, many drawn by his remarkable story, now the subject of an upcoming documentary. When I awoke from my coma, he told the attentive crowd, I discovered I had lost everything. My home, my company, my marriage, even my legal existence. But what I've gained in return is perhaps more valuable. Perspective, resilience, and the knowledge that we can rebuild from absolute zero. Across the room, he caught Weston's encouraging nod, Myra's subtle smile. In the back, even Detective Drake had appeared to show support. Callaway Designs has been reborn as Phoenix Architecture, Brock continued, specializing in renewal projects, transforming abandoned spaces into vibrant community resources. Because I believe in second chances, in reimagining what seems destroyed. The room erupted in applause as he concluded his speech. As guests mingled afterward, Brock found himself approached by an unfamiliar woman with intelligent eyes and a warm smile. Mr. Callaway, she said, extending her hand. Dr. Renee Maxwell, your story is extraordinary, and your work with TBI patients is making a real difference. Dr. Maxwell, you're at the Neuroscience Institute, correct? I am. We're developing new protocols for coma assessment, partially inspired by your case. She hesitated, then added, I hope that's not too forward to mention. Not at all, Brock replied, finding himself genuinely smiling. I've learned that our worst experiences can sometimes lead to unexpected good, if we're brave enough to rebuild. Later that evening, as Brock drove home along the coastal highway, he reflected on how far he'd come. The legal battles continued. Insurance companies fought every claim. Bureaucracies resisted resurrecting a dead man. Rebuilding his company required navigating countless obstacles. But for the first time since awakening in that hospital bed, Brock felt something like peace. Not because justice had been served, though it had. Not because his name had been cleared, though it was. But because he had faced betrayal so profound it should have destroyed him, and chosen to rise instead. The man who had died in that storage unit was gone forever. In his place stood someone stronger, warier perhaps, but determined to build something meaningful from the ashes of betrayal. As the city lights twinkled below like earthbound stars, Brock made a silent promise to himself. The past would remain where it belonged, behind him. The future, with all its uncertainty and possibility, lay ahead. And this time, he would build it on a foundation no one could ever steal away. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.